Today, you said?
We're on the internet.
Tomorrow.
Sweet.
I ordered it
Okay.
last night.
So now apparently people can watch us, I guess. So technically there's an audience, so no more cursing, Aaron. Okay, so what's the plan? What do you guys want to talk about today? This is very much...
Talking about different trial types and making new trial types, I guess.
Who's playing audio? Oh, maybe just turn it down a little bit, because in case somebody is actually in there who might want to know something. Okay, so trial types. Where do we start? Okay, we should probably...
We haven't even previewed all the different trial types yet, right?
Yeah, I don't think we
Maybe
have,
that's the
so...
There's an all trial.
Yeah, which condition is that? And we didn't really talk that much about conditions. I just said, oh, they're different, but I guess the practical reason you'd want to use the conditions is if you have, one stimuli set and two counterbalanced orders, instead of having to make two whole experiments, you just make another ordering.
Or between subjects design?
Yeah, actually. Yeah, so for between subject stuff, you'd want to set up the different conditions, which would be combinations of usually, the same stimuli for different subjects, or if you want, one set of subjects studying one type of stimuli and the other set studying another type. Here in your condition file, you would just actually can people
Or
have to
different
zoom in a
groups
little bit.
going through slightly different procedures, or receiving different instructions.
Yeah. So the different instructions, I guess that'll get into the programming side. We'll probably cover that in a little bit, because right now there's one instructions that everybody gets, but I can show people how to set up multiple instructions.
The quick workaround, I guess, is just to have the first trial of your
instructions.
Experiment be the real first instructions.
Yeah. So you think we should just do the all trial types condition? Where is that?
9, maybe?
Oh,
wait, no.
It's 11.
11.
11? Okay, all trials. So let's open that procedure file, because I probably want to set it to user timing so we can sit there and talk about them and it doesn't just blow past us. So you guys can do it on your own too. So all trials inside of procedure. I always bold the top because I don't know why, it just makes me feel better. Oh, all the timings are user. Perfect. So, what is that name? If you go to localhost, which you'll see is mine, is going to do this, which is probably what yours are going to do. This happens if you don't have WAMP running or MAMP. So turn your server back on. Click through. It's on. Here we go. Oh, did I not set this computer up? Oh, this is an old version. That's why it works. So condition 11 is the one that has all the trial types that we currently have available, although we're planning on building some new ones. And I guess a quick note about conditions. Right now, under stimuli, each of them has the stimuli folder. It leads with stimuli / the name of the file. In probably about a week or by next week, that stimuli part should go away. The same for the procedure files. We'll just assume you're putting them in the stimuli folder. It makes the files a lot cleaner. Instead of seeing all these stimuli / and the name of the file, it'll just have a file name. Mm-hmm. If you still want to have folders within your procedure file or within your stimuli folder, you can make a folder called folder 1 / this. So you can still put folders inside of there, but if you put nothing, we're just going to assume that you're inside of the stimuli folder. It'll make your files a lot cleaner. So that's coming. And the same thing will happen with the procedure column. So all of these things will turn to this, and your life will be easier. But for now, life is hard.
I think we can also make it so that you don't need the finishing txt if you want to use CSV files.
Yeah, we could do that too. So as you'll see, lots of times whenever we talk about stuff with this program, almost everything is always in flux because we're constantly adding stuff to it. So these things may not be true forever, the stuff we talk about now, but usually you can just look at the files and see, oh, they've made things easier. We rarely add things that'll make your life harder. Usually we're solving problems sort of for you ahead of time. So, Tyson, did you have something to say?
Oh, my code will always make it more complicated. Good job.
Yeah, you'll make it more complicated, and then I'll try to undo most of what you do, and then we'll end up in a happy medium. Or sometimes just back with what I would have done. So here I'm logging into condition 11, which just shows you all the trial type number for row 3 in the procedure file, all trials. So this might be one of the things I broke. So right now we're looking at a version that is very recently updated. So it doesn't like that I put no there. Why doesn't it like that I put no? Should I roll back to Tyson's version? It's getting angry that there's a no there, Tyson.
Is it?
It's saying the trial type number, trial type no for row 3 and procedure trials has no file or folder. Shouldn't it know that if it says no, that it don't check it?
Yeah, it should. Let me see what's going on.
You want to roll back to the old code right now?
Yeah, probably.
Let's see, where would that be happening? It's going to be somewhere in login. So do you want to look at that and I can talk about the general stuff we're going to cover?
Yeah, I'll take a look at it.
Okay, because I think to understand, so we're going to talk about trial types today, and I think to know how to make trial types, you kind of have to know, there's a bunch of different technologies going into making this whole thing run, and you kind of have to know a little bit of all of them, although not all that much of each, which you'll see I don't know a lot about things that I'm using, and you don't really need that much information. But the way this program is set up to run, so as everyone's computers, I've told you to install a MAMP or a WAMP or LAMP. What we're using there is the W, the L, the M just tells you which operating system you're on. The A is for Apache, so Apache is a web server, which is literally just localhost. So when I go there, it just serves up pages. So the web server Apache just says, when I go to a place, send me back a web page. So because this is all running in the browser or on the web, either way it's the same thing, what you're getting back from the program is just a web page. So that's what's coming back every time, is we're getting web pages back. So Apache is giving us web pages back. There's MySQL, which we don't use. It's for databases. You don't need to worry about that. And the thing that's making most of the interesting stuff happen is the P, which is PHP. So when you hit a page that has PHP code, what happens is that the server sees you want a page with the .php at the end, and PHP is just a programming language. So PHP, basically it tells it, go to the code, so this file name, it has a bunch of PHP code in it, run through and do whatever the code says. And so PHP is just doing programming language stuff, figuring out what comes first, what comes second, what thing to show next. And what PHP sends back are these things. So if you look at, I can show you here in the trial types folder, you should probably have a bunch of echoes. Wait, you're not echoing stuff? Okay. So here we go. So we're hitting here, say it's audio. I'll show you one that we've already talked about, which is study. So study.php. So when I go to the server and it asks for study.php, what the server says is, okay, now we're going to execute some code. So this little tag right here, I'll make it bigger. This tag in the file says, okay, this is the beginning of some programming, some code. So we're going to execute some stuff. So I open a tag here, and you can say, okay, this is beginning PHP, and now that tells the web server everything that comes after this. Use PHP to figure out what we're trying to do. So in these trial types, all we set is we set computer timing. So that means when you set the timing to be computer, what value should we use for this trial type? So we give it some code, which is here. This is some basic PHP. Like this is really simple stuff, which is $signs mean this is a variable. So this is a thing we want to save some value into. So we set this variable comp time equal to 5, which is what the code is going to use to figure out that this should be 5 seconds. And then we run this little function we wrote called trial timing. And this function basically combines all the stuff we know about the trial and figures out which timing we should be using. And then we close the PHP tag, which means stop sending or stop doing PHP code. Stop interpreting this as programming language stuff. And when you close the PHP tag, it basically, the web server just says, okay, everything after this is just HTML code. It's literally just a web page. So most of the stuff you're doing for making your trial type is just sending it HTML to make a web page. So I have a little file in here that you can mess with HTML. So we say, okay, there's some PHP code here, do this stuff, stop doing PHP, and when we're not doing PHP, the web server just assumes it send out HTML code. So this wouldn't be that useful if we didn't. We need to combine the two. Is what we really need to do, because PHP lets us change different items, and HTML tells us here's how it should be displayed. So back this up a little bit. So here we just say, okay, start some HTML. So we declare a div, which is essentially in HTML just a box. So okay, we want a box. We give it some classes. We'll talk about why you do that later. And then we say, okay, so a span is just saying, okay, here's another little span where we want to put some text into it. And then what we do is we declare, okay, now we're going to put some PHP again. Because what we're doing is basically saying, okay, we have these placeholders, we have a layout for what's supposed to be happening, but we want to insert variable information into this layout. Because if we didn't have the PHP tag here, we just have to type whatever we wanted to see. Like if we wanted to see the word dog here, we'd have to type dog. And that would be the thing that shows up in that span, dog. What we want is something flexible. So what we do is we say, okay, make this span and put in a variable thing. So we say start some PHP code, and the way PHP sends out HTML, basically the end product we're trying to get out of PHP is some HTML. Send us back some HTML code. And so the command you use to send out stuff is echo. So echo just means send this as HTML code to the web browser or in building this web page. So we say, okay, on the left here, start some code and echo the value for whatever the Q is here. So again, we're just doing a study trial, so it's going to be a Q, semicolon, or no, colon, and then a pair, or the target. So we say on the left here, send out the Q, and then close PHP, which means, okay, now we're not doing code anymore, we're just back to sending web page HTML formatting. Close that left thing. Now put something here in the center that has the colon. You could change this character to something else, and it would change the way the web page looks. Close that thing, and then start a thing on the right. In the middle, we want to put something variable there, so we can say, okay, start some PHP code, and now echo out the target, which means whatever the target value is set for this trial, send that to the web page.
Also, there's a shortcut for these sort of just really quick, open a PHP tag, echo something. If you just do left square, question mark, equals, and then the variable, and then close the tag, that handles the entire echoing thing. So you can just
Wait, do what?
What does that look like?
Tyson, are you in there? Can you share your screen? Is there a way I can show everybody what you're talking about? Are you in the Hangout? Yeah, you should be. Can I say? So you do on the left, there's a screen share button. So you see my infinity on the far edge of my infinity? The button there that will say screen share?
I see it. Let's see.
You should be able to share your screen, and I think I can say, like, oh, I can eject you. So much power.
Alright, I think I can share my notepad.
Because I think I'm looking at your screen now. I don't actually know how it tells, like,
Oh, good.
oh, now, oh, I can set it to look at what Tyson's screen is
Right,
showing.
and I set it just to look at my notepad++.
Okay, so just bring up your notepad and then show people what you're talking about. You probably want to zoom in.
How do I zoom in and...
Control plus, I think.
Yeah, that only works for browsers.
Control shift plus. That's what works in Antenna. Let's see. Let me look at my notepad plus. View, zoom, control number pad plus. So you have to do the plus on the number pad. I hope you have a number pad. Is it looking at my screen again?
Yeah.
Set it
There we
back
go.
to Tyson's screen. Okay.
Okay, so...
So that should be.
Are we looking at my screen?
I don't know what we're looking at here. I should be looking at you. I'm trying to say, look at Tyson's screen. There we go.
Okay, so right here I just created this variable called and it's equal to the string amazing. And then right at the top I have this little thing that just says, just equal and pretty straightforward, right? And what that looks like is now I have, I guess you can't see it on this, let me add that to the screen share.
Is there any way I could just like full screen Tyson?
That's my setting, I'll just do it.
No, I mean a way to like just show nothing but you on my screen.
Alright, so now I've got this little amazing word that popped out.
Mm-hmm.
And so rather than, it would be the exact same as doing this. It's just a little shorter. You just do sort of this open question mark equals, the variable name, and then you can close it. It's just a little shortcut.
So how would you set that so it's flexibly pulling in what you want from your order file, your stimuli file?
Well, like right here we've got where it says echo Q. You can replace this with that. It's the same thing. And it does the same thing. So I get dog and cat out of it. It's just when I'm trying to do all these inline stuff.
Never have
So you
to
don't-
set it.
Yeah, so you don't have to put that under $, haha.
Oh yeah. I was just creating an extra variable to do some extra random gibberish. But the Q and the target variables are already set by trial.php, so you always have these aliases. The shortcut that I'm talking about is purely the difference between this and this.
Okay.
Or-
Gotcha.
Okay. So as long as the $ whatever you want is defined somewhere, and it could be have been defined on a previous page.
Because it's
and
in the
Not-
major array, right?
So PHP is weird in that. I guess when we get more into the code, it'll become clear what's happening. But on PHP, if you define a variable on like login, you just say, okay, $name is equal to Veronica, and then you go to the next page and you try to type $, you like echo $Veronica. That variable doesn't exist on that other page. Things only exist on their page, with the exception of there's a variable called $_session, which that is persistent for your entire experience on that web page. So for each person, the Apache web server declares session as a variable, and you can store stuff in there. So if I go to the home page and it says $session, and session is an array, so essentially it's a variable that can hold a bunch of buckets of anything. So I use arrays all over the program, but arrays are really useful. So if you ever want a variable to be declared on one page and then be used on another page, you should set it in session, because session will be persistent throughout the experiment. So you can set something on the first page, and then you can access it later. But if you didn't put it in session, it essentially disappears as soon as you go to the next page.
$Q has been already set.
Yeah, so
in session.
Here what we're doing is we're all working off the page trial.php, right? That's our URL at the moment. And trial.php basically loads the current row of the order and the current stimuli row, and it creates a list of variables for you. And then it creates a little sandbox for you to put your code here. So right now, this is the study.php file, right?
So it does all the
So
aliases
So-
immediately.
So yeah, we're always inside this file,
I'm trying
trial.php.
to pull up the require. Oh, it's an include, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's what happens. So on trial, the page, the way we've broken this up so you don't have to mess with the actual trial.php page itself, trial.php runs and it just says, okay, whatever your trial you're using, so if you're using a trial called study, it goes to the folder called trial types and finds the file called study.php, and it does what in PHP is called an include, which basically just means go to this point in the code. So here we have this include trial file. So we just run through the code as if we're on trial.php, and when you run an include, essentially what PHP does is says, take the contents of this PHP file and pretend that they were all written right here in the code. So it treats it as if you're still on trial.php.
So you're kind of nesting that other thing
Yeah.
inside of the overall trial.php.
Yeah, and we're doing this because it used to be super complex, and that if you wanted to add a trial type, you had to come into this big file and figure out.
If nest. Do you remember that sort of like
Yeah.
Yeah.
here on this one? So now it basically, rather than going through that if chain, it just says, I'm on the trial type free recall. Go find the file with that name and use it.
Yeah, and then basically replace line 150 with all the code that's inside of that file. So run that code right there at that point in time.
So adding a new trial type just involves adding a new file
Yeah.
in that folder.
So it's as simple as if I want to take study, I can just, I did it last time with new. So where is it? Okay, so I go to, and the trial types are in code. So code, trial types, I can grab study, copy, paste it, and rename it study.
And so things don't have to be redefined because it treats it as if it were on that trial.php page.
Yeah. So the trial.php page is doing the stuff like saying what $Q is for you. So then it just knows to call up the associated Q with that line of stimuli that you're using for this trial. Called study Q.
And at the very beginning of the experiment, it takes like the conditions file and does your order and your, these are wrong words, sorry, your procedure and your stimuli, and it puts them all into session. So that kind of like happens at the very beginning, which is, I guess, something good for people to know.
Yeah.
So
that's the reason.
preset.
That would be the reason why if you change the order file midway through the experiment and refresh, the changes aren't reflected. You have to like load the program from the beginning.
Yes.
You load the file once at login, and then you just use that memory bank for the rest of the experiment. Versus, like, if you notice, like, I was changing things, like whether or not to echo out my haha, that I just save the file and refresh, and it shows up immediately, because that code is just re-pulled from the file.
Yeah, it does it every time you... So that's actually a good way to, when you're making a new trial type, you just set the timing to user, and then you make the, you copy the one that's closest to what you're doing, and then load it up, say it looks like this, start making some changes, save the new file you're editing, and then hit refresh on the web page. And when the code goes through, when it hits that include again, it says, okay, go back to whatever's in that file and run the code as it is right now. Okay. So when you refresh the page, it essentially is just saying, okay, show me whatever you have now. So it's a lot simpler now to make trials.
And this might be beyond the scope, but since we're talking about like, oh, the PHP creates HTML, whatever, do you want to talk us through how, because all the trials on like this one page now, like how it iterates through things? Or is that
Sure. Yeah.
not worth talking about?
Well, I'd say.
Okay.
I can give a simplified explanation.
Okay, you can,
Okay, cool.
and it might change.
Right.
Well, not theoretically. The execution will change, but the idea is there.
How it works so far is that there's a counter that's just called position, and it starts off at like -1 if you haven't started the experiment yet. And
see if I can pull up the code for what you're talking about every time.
Yeah, it should be, well, yeah, you use this at the top of the trial. And then we set some aliases for like, here's where we set Q and target and answer. That's why you can use it inside your trial types. And basically what this page does is it checks if any data has just been sent to this page, which happens when you post a trial. So like you click submit, it actually sends the information back to itself. And then once it does that, it starts storing that into a big session variable. And it keeps on adding more of this information until you finish all the post trials of one row in the order file. So say you have your trial type is study, and then afterwards you give a JOL. You submit your study, which doesn't really have any information, and it stores it into a variable. And then you submit your JOL, and the program realizes that you finished the end of that order row. And so at that point, it'll combine the two outputs into one line and write it into the output file. And then while it does that, it's just incrementing sort of the current position as well as the current post.
So the writing happens at next.php. It knows when it knows, okay, I've done all the levels for this trial. Let's say trial 4 has post 1, post 2, and post 3. It says the program goes through, do the original one, now send the data back to myself.
So it's still doing the next loops.
No, it doesn't. It actually doesn't loop to next. So if let's say we have trial 1 it has a trial type, it has a post 1 trial type, a post 2, and a post 3. It runs trial.php runs until it hits the include. It includes the stuff. And then when you hit submit, whatever data gets submitted goes back to trial itself, because trial every time is checking, do I have data submitted to me? If I do, save it, and then increment that I'm not on the first level, I'm on post 1 now. And then post 1 does the same thing. It says, okay, save that data as post 1 data, and now increment that I should display post 2 stuff. The same, and then when post 3 will send back to trial, and trial will say, there's not another post level here, send to next to write all that stuff that I've
and then we can go to the next row. And it'll be smart about it in that it won't try and submit to itself over and over if you have like a bunch of no post trial for this row, no post trial for this row. So you shouldn't get a lot of refreshes for that. It basically says, if I have another trial type on this row, then do it, then add the data. Otherwise, just go write it and go on to the next row.
Yeah, so now you don't need, so in the past, I guess it's worth talking for people, mostly for Ryan and Courtney, you don't need to set up stuff in scoring to say, save the things I've made. You just put a line there. Basically, in your input, you just add stuff, and the program automatically records it.
Oh yeah, so yeah, the way that we record data is a lot more flexible. You can have new columns.
So this is just, I guess, good for new users to know kind of how it's working through positions in their order file and making that out there.
And I think a lot of the order stuff, so this is the one part of the documentation that's still probably useful, is if you go in there, there's this PDF called Session Trials. So this is essentially trying to give you an idea of what's happening. So we talked about combining the procedure file and the stimuli file to making the experiment, and the thing we save it as is this thing, $_ session, and then, so session is an array, and we say the key trials is just another array within sessions, and inside of trials, we save at each position all the information we know about that trial. So at position 0, we don't set anything because it's more readable to have a trial 1, to start at trial 1. So we say, okay, session trials 1, again, 1 is also an array itself, and inside of that we have stimuli, procedure, or response, and then we have a value for each of the columns inside of those files. So if you wanted to, in theory, let's say you wanted to write some PHP code, so we're showing you how PHP you can write echoes. So there's built-in stuff for you, like the queue of the current trial is built in. But for some reason, if you really wanted to know, I need the queue from trial 3, you can sort of look at this array and kind of work your way backwards as to how you would do that. So it's $_ session. Is this big enough? So you put that single quote, or that's just saying, okay, this is the position in the session array we're looking at. Give me the number. We want trial 2. So you're sort of just navigating this like tree structure. We'll do trial 1 because you can see it. So let's say I want this. I want the reaction time, the RT, for trial 1. So session _ trial 1 response. Oops, I missed a thing there. So now we're down to this level, and we want RT, and we'll just call that. So if we want to make it easier for stuff when we're using this, we call it, RT1 is equal to this. So now in your code, you can use that value. Let's say you wanted to compare, RT1 minus. So we have this file response RT. Oops. So let's say diff. You can just declare things. And what's nice about PHP is you don't have to say var thing. You can just make up variables as you're going, which is the reason programmers don't tend to like it, because it's not very well controlled. But for people who aren't programmers, it's a lot friendlier, and that you can just make up variables as you need them. So I don't have to declare diff somewhere. I can just say diff is equal to this thing I calculated.
And so if you wanted to give participants feedback, you could say, you were 5 seconds slower.
Yeah, this will give you milliseconds, but yeah.
Yeah.
And you can do the calculation, milliseconds time are divided by 1,000, round the number.
So does this rely on you being able to know which trial number it was? Because if you have shuffled your order in your procedure and you want to call back, so let's say they had studied Q target pair whale mammal, and you wanted to, at some point down the line, call back to how fast it took for them to respond to that trial, but it was shuffled. Are you able to call that then in that case? You
can, but what you'd have to do is write some code that runs at every trial. So what I like to do is, because we know session is the only place we can keep stuff for the whole experiment, you can just put anything in session you want. You can just declare a new array. So session, let's call it a past RT. Again, you can just do this anywhere in the code. You say past RT is equal to an array. That's too many things. So you declare that somewhere, and now on every page you can access past RT. Past RT is just an array that can hold stuff. So when they do whale, you can just say, man, I can't type right now. let's go has past RT on the current Q. So let's say whale was the word is equal to current trial.
Oh, are you faster at doing this individual item than you were before?
Well, basically what you can do is say every time I run a trial, in this array I've called past RT, store with the key of the queue. So let's say whale is the queue for this one. So for the queue, if I go to past RT whale, what the value it's going to be storing is the response time on the current trial. So you can just say, okay, for every trial do this, store the response time. And then if I want to get it later, when I see whale again, I can just say go to past RT and look up the queue. Because if I, the first time I saw whale, I set past RT whale equal to 300 milliseconds. Then later when I'm looking at it, I can say, okay, go back and look up past RT whale, and that value will be whatever you got when you ran it. And it'll do this, it'll iterate. So for every queue, it'll generate a unique position inside of past RT and store the response time. Okay. So this is in general how I solve almost all of my problems with arrays. You'll see. You'll get used to looking at arrays. I do everything in arrays because in PHP, especially if you want to have things across the experiment, it's just a lot easier to just throw everything in session. And also you can use, there's lots of helpful loops that will let you search through arrays, which is why I tend to like to use them. And if you want to see, actually, Tyson, did you figure out how to fix that no thing?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
So it just turned out that you had commented out the variable called not trials that I was using to
okay.
hold.
So can I just uncomment that?
Yeah, so if you look online,
where is it?
I've actually got it sort of on my screen, what code you need to bring back.
So just comment that back into existence?
So I put that here, and I
okay, so
inserted those in.
This is development on the fly, people. Not T. Actually, I can just copy this and declare it right somewhere else at the bottom.
So that's in login?
Yes.
I can just push a new version for you guys right now. I mean, this will be a weird interim commit, but you can just download a new version if you'd like.
If you want to just fix it quickly.
Yeah, because that code is in login.
Yeah, then it's in login, and then you find the area where I'm creating this not trials variable, and just take it out of the comments, and it will work. So I
didn't download the today's thing, so I still have the old one.
Okay, so yours should still run. Because the code, the changes I made won't affect the functioning unless you.
What line of code is that?
Look it up.
I'll just wait until you push the next one, and I'll grab that.
Yeah, okay, that should be good. Is that the one? Well, yeah, most of these things you don't even need to fix. You can just be like, okay, just download new version if it works.
Gotcha, I found
yes.
it.
Okay, so
you can.
Is it just too slow to use?
I was like, things it would take like.
Okay, it's
seconds.
pushed already.
We're taking like 20 seconds, and so by the time.
Yeah, I can't stand when the computer's slow. I'm just like, I'm done. Push it out. I don't want to touch it.
You just want to uncomment that one block.
It's super frustrating when you get used to like things being pretty snappy, and you're like, come on, folder, open. I know the files are in there.
And then right just that array area.
So I'm like obsessively upgrading my computers.
Yeah, and then just put another one right at the end of that.
I can download a new version. It's there now.
What are you gonna do with it?
Do /*.
Probably keeping
That'll work.
my pictures and stuff. I can just use it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good idea.
See if it fixed it. There we go. We're back. All right, awesome. Okay, so I don't remember what the plan was.
Trial types 9.
Trial types. To show everyone the trial types. It was 11, right?
11.
Damn it.
Courtney fails.
Oh my god.
Typing sound. Condition 11. Condition 11 has all of the trial types. So let's open those two files. So we go to 11 here. Again, not the number. It's looking at the number in the row here. So not lining up with the Excel 11, but actually 12 on Excel. So we know the stimuli is full stim. So we go to the collector, experiment, stimuli, full stim. So there we go. Those are full stimuli. Bold things, make them bigger. And our procedure file is all trials. So this was designed just to show you how all the trials look, or at least all the ones I think we currently have. So what should happen here? I guess who has the least bit? KP or Aaron?
Yes.
What should happen here? What are we gonna see if we open up? Let's see. Maybe. Yeah, I don't expect you to see that. I'm just fixing this. I resize the column stupidly.
Dots.
Okay. A migraine headache. What's going to happen here?
Okay, study trial. Oh god, I can't see, blurry. I'll just look at my own screen.
Why are we still crooked up there?
The wire won't stretch.
Oh, really?
I don't have it stretch.
Do you want to switch?
No, that's fine. It doesn't matter if it's crooked.
Well, the Q and the target would just be shown. The repair will be shown. Study trials. And then,
Okay.
do we have like any stuff shuffling going on? I can't tell.
These are shuffled here
Okay.
on the stimuli, but not on the. Oh, am I hiding it? There's no shuffling happening on the procedure. The shuffle is off.
Okay. So then we just randomly select from the stimuli list
Which one?
the.
So if it's 2, what are the possibilities that 2 could end up being?
Am I looking at the right file? Getting it.
Okay, let me log in. We got our instructions. Actually, while KP thinks about that, I should show them how to change the instructions. Now that we've talked a little bit about what PHP code is. So here's the instructions file, instructions.php. There's one set of instructions that everybody gets. So here it is. It's called task instructions, and we tell them some stuff. We can insert PHP code in here to make this variable depending on what condition they're in. So right now we just basically send out a bunch of HTML code and that's it. But we could declare open the PHP tag, which means we're gonna do some programming here. Those are PHP tag.
Is it just one of those 3?
And now we make a variable. Let's just call it instruct. INS is good enough.
Yeah.
Is equal to an empty string right now, so we're just saying it's equal to nothing. There's nothing in there. And then if. So what's nice about apt10, it fills out these things for you. So it guesses I wanted to type session, which I usually want to type. So I say if session condition. So this is the way I access almost everything. Is I make an condition. I set the current condition. I save it in this array called condition, and each of the columns for this condition they're logged into, I address it by the name of the column. So if I want the number of the condition they're in, I type number. If I want the procedure, the stimuli, the description, I address them all by the name. So if I want a condition notes, I would just copy the name of that column, and in my code I'd say if session condition notes equal and whatever I want to check it against. But usually number is the easiest to go with. So condition number is equal to 1. So if that's 1, then I set instruct is equal to. And again, what I'm doing here is I'm writing HTML code. And the way HTML works is it's just a bunch of tags. So you're closing and opening tag. You're saying how do you want to display this stuff? So P just means it's a paragraph, so display it as a paragraph should be displayed. And most of the HTML stuff you can just look up online. That's generally how I solve my problems. Is I want to do a thing, and I type HTML and whatever I'm trying to do into Google, and I copy paste code basically. Because I don't know HTML all that well, and which is proof that you don't really need to know it. Because if I didn't know it and this thing runs, then you're halfway there. So P for condition 1, you say don't try. And you'll notice this. See that how the code coloring went weird. The reason it broke is because the way I'm declaring this string is with this single quote. So when I try to use the single quote or the apostrophe, it freaks out and says I don't like that. What's the escape character, Tyson? / or /?
Back.
There we go. So sometimes you have to escape a character, which means if it's a character that's important to the code, if you put a little apostrophe there, the code will think, oh, you want to stop this string you're declaring. But I don't, so I escape the character using this, which just means ignore the fact that this is usually used to denote the beginning and ending of strings, and instead treat it as the literal character that I'm typing. Or
if you wanted to display a backslash, you would actually escape the backslash.
Yeah, so you do this would give you a backslash because you're saying don't think of it as a backslash. It's not an escape character. I'm escaping the next thing that's coming.
Yeah, so the backslash means that the next character is literally text. So if you want a backslash thing is literally text, you have to tell the program, treat this literally.
So here I'm saying don't try, and that's their instruction. And I give them a semicolon, and I can say, so if it's condition 1, tell them don't try. Else, select is equal to, I'm saying do it as a paragraph, or let's say I want to do it as really emphasize. H1 is header 1, which means, okay, this is big text. Try. So I'm really trying to rig the game in my favor for this experiment. So condition 1, I tell them don't try. Every other condition, I tell them to try. If I ran this right now, nothing would happen, so I actually can run this. So I go back to instructions. If I run it, it looks exactly the same. The reason it looks the same is because I didn't echo. All this stuff is just PHP. It doesn't exist anywhere until I send it to the page. Right now, I'm just making up strings, and I'm setting them to things, but I'm not doing anything with the strings. What I need to do is send these strings to the page. So I'm going to hide. Let's say I'll leave the regular study text. I want everyone to get this text, so I just leave it as not PHP. It's not variable. Everyone will see the stuff that isn't in the PHP tags. But what I want to do is send out this instruct variable I have. So in one case, it's set to don't try. In the other case, it's set to try. And when I do, it just say echo the thing that I created. Save that. Now this person gets try because they're in condition
11.
Yeah. So there's default styling. Yeah, we'll get into the styling of how these things work, but that gets into CSS, which is the other thing that you need to understand. So the combination of this is you need to know Apache is serving web pages. That's about all you need to know. When the server hits, Apache says send a page back. PHP is a programming language that says what do we want to do? What are the variables we're going to set? How are we going to branch in different ways? So that does a lot of the muscle work of like making the program function and cycle as it's supposed to. And then what's displayed here is HTML saying what's the format of the page. So our PHP is generating HTML code, which is saying this is how I want to format it. I want to send out a paragraph, and then I want to send out a header. Or I want to send out a paragraph in this case, or a header in this other case. But what's determining the look of these things is another file, which is a CSS file, which is CSS is cascading style sheet. But basically, CSS is just saying, okay, you sent me a paragraph. What do you like paragraphs to look like? Or you sent me a header. What do you like headers to look like? So in this case, if I go to my CSS, I can look up. What do we set p tags? I'm sure they're set somewhere. Okay, so here's h1. So this is the type right here. We're saying, so the way CSS works is you tell it, you can style lots of things. You can style classes. So as I talked about in study, there's a div here, and it says class equal to these two things, which means it has these two properties. It has the properties of whatever I've determined the properties of study are, and whatever I've determined the properties of precache are. And it also has the properties of div, which whatever properties div has, it also has. So the reason it's called cascading is because an item inherits its style from everything that it comes from. So in general, if you look at the global.css, there should be a body. Where did we actually set body, Tyson? Because I know we should get rid of the zeroing or the CSS reset. Okay, so here, HTML. So everything, if you look at the web page, so I'm going to do something that's kind of going to look weird, but it's useful. So this is a little program called Firebug. It lets you inspect a web page. So it basically shows you the structure of, here's what we're looking at. So this is the web page we're looking at, and I opened up Firebug and said, show me what is actually the code behind this web page. So everything on the web page is enclosed in this thing, HTML. So HTML is the wrapper saying to the browser, we're going to send you HTML code now, treat it as HTML. There's a head which has stuff like, it says which CSS file should we be using, and that has a bunch of information. It says the title, which tells you the title of the page. So if you look at the page in Firefox, it says experiment instructions, and the reason it says that is because the title is equal to experiment instructions, which if you look at the code that we had on instructions.php is not included there. Oh wait, no, there it is. No, it's not. Well, the reason it's not here is because this is included elsewhere, but we'll not worry about that right now. So what we want to look at is, what was I showing people? I've already forgotten. Oh, these switch frames, okay. So here's the code. There's an H2 with a class called text center. There's an H1, the one that we sent out there. There's a p tag, which means this is a paragraph. Here's the text inside that paragraph. There's another p tag. And what you can look at in Firebug, it shows you where all the styling is coming from. So inside of body, we set some of these properties. So the font is set from body, and you can look at that happens in CSS, global.css line 87. There's stuff like HTML. Because this p tag is within the HTML tag, it inherits the properties of the HTML tag, which in practical terms means this. It means that we set a default font to use, and everything that you display on the page follows that font. You can overwrite that font choice, but you don't have to set every item to have the same font. You can just say, if it's within the HTML tag, give it these properties. So give it this coloring, give it this font size, and this typeface. And now if I echo things, they'll have these properties of the HTML. So they'll have this font size, this typeface, this color. And the same thing works for, like, where does the reset end? So for classes, like in study, so he has two classes. It has a class called study, a class called precache. So in CSS, you can treat things as, if they're just a heading like HTML, it doesn't have it. It just says HTML space, and then the curly brackets, and then you set a bunch of properties. So font, here's a bunch of properties. I can never remember these things, so I just look them up every time on Google. I just type CSS font size, and there'll be a web page somewhere that'll say, to set the font size, here's the code you use, change the numbers. Or, oh, color is a weird one. So it uses these codes for color. Again, just go into Google and type CSS color picker, and it'll give you a big wheel of colors. You click on the color you want, and it'll give you the code that you need for that color. Again, these are things I don't memorize. Or if you have something like a class, the way you set things for it is with the dot. So the dot means if something has this class study, so dot study means for everything that has the class study attached to it, these are the properties that I want you to give it.
And what's a class?
A class is just a way to tag any HTML element. So here, div, we say class is equal to this and this. So this is not actually one class, but if there's a space separating them, that means it's multiple classes. So it allows you to stack a bunch of stuff on top of one. You can say, oh, I want it to have big, you can make a class called big and a class called red. And if you want text to be big and red, you'd be like, okay, p tag, within a paragraph, I want everything to be big and red. So you open a p tag, and within it, instead of closing it like we did here, so here we did this, you just say class equals big, red, and then it would look into the CSS file. Let's pretend they exist right now. So we look for something that says .big, and inherit those properties, and look for something that says .red, and inherit those properties. So it'll just say, okay, I know I'm from HTML, so this is the font face I should be using, but I also have the class big, So look into big and see what properties are set there.
So it's a good practice then to set each class to be like one specific dimension or feature, so that you don't end up clashing with like both a red and a blue.
No, because that would get a little excessive. If you give something called instructions, it's like I want this to be bigger, I want this to be this color, and I want it to be bold. It's fine to do it all in one group.
But I mean, you can get pretty messy with CSS. I mean, this is way cleaned up. So this CSS was done all by Adam Blake because my CSS was a mess before because I did it like you said, Veronica. I just kept putting classes on things and change. Like, I want to make a new trial type that does this thing. Okay, just make a new class for it and then style it that way. So I mean, it's a feasible strategy. It's technically programmers don't like it, but like if it's just your own stuff, you can make it work. But what you have to remember is that if you have these styling things happening in global.css, if you download a new version, they go away. Right, because if you download the new version of the program, it won't have your changes in global.css, so you need to maybe separate them off to a piece at the end so you can copy them into the new version, or you can include them in the trial type itself.
Right, so actually if you look at my screen.
Okay, how do I go? Sorry, so where are you? Is this you here?
Yeah.
Man, I wish I could like full screen you. Is there a... I don't know how to do that.
So you can do sort of custom local styling with a style tag in the HTML. And so here I just said that H1 tags, they should have their background color set to this.
That's HTML now, not CSS.
Right, so in HTML you get into the CSS by making these style tags.
Okay.
And so in these tags, nothing in here is shown. Like this won't show up on the screen because this style tag isn't shown. But this will affect down here where I'm using another random, a random variable is bigger than 5, use H1, otherwise use H2, and up here I have H1 set to a background color. And so we refresh a couple times. There's one that's got a big blue background, this one doesn't have a blue background.
Okay.
And so if you were to do something like in a trial type, like at the top of study or something, you could do something like that where it's just like
yeah, so here everything that has the class study stuff we get the 200% font size. And this is probably best practice if you're making trial types to just at the top of your trial type declare a style tag and then just start putting CSS in it, because files don't have to have one CSS, or code doesn't, like HTML doesn't need one CSS file. You can give it a bunch of CSS files and it can it'll look through all of them to try to find the styling. So this way, instead of having to download a new version and find where you edited global.css, you can just leave that stuff alone, and then instead, yeah, look, see Tyson's here. He has now.
So right, I have like this style here. I'm not going to take up font size because that looks ugly, but I said that it's going to be bold.
And so show them the code that has study stuff there. I just sent font size because it's more apparent, which is.
I want to do background color again.
Okay, background color. Can you see on my screen? Okay, so I can point at his screen. Awesome. So here on the thing in the study trial, the class he added. So there was study left, which was there, and he put a space, which means I want to put another class on it, and the other class he's putting is called study stuff. So the code will basically say, okay, I have styling for things that say study stuff on them, or they have this class. So when it shows this on the web page, it says, okay, well, apply this styling to this item, which here is the queue, right? You wrap the queue within this span, so it says everything within here will get the styling from the HTML page, from whatever study left is equal to, and also from study stuff, which here he's set to have this background color of, what is that, Tyson? You've memorized these, I'm sure.
It's red.
It's red, he knows it, okay. Tyson's crazy. So there you go.
How do you know whether to set a div class, a spam class, or a form class?
It's totally fine to set styling on any one of those elements.
Yeah.
Whatever happens to be convenient for you, whatever makes sense to you, go with that one.
Some things have inherent properties, like a div is an inline element.
So it was a block element.
Oh, yeah, block line element, yeah. Block spans are inline elements, so this gets annoying in that technically if you just declare a div, its default behavior is to stretch across the entire screen, So if you just set a div and didn't tell it not to do that, it would just basically, if these divs, like, okay, Word's wrapped in a span right now, but if you wrapped it in a div, Word would be on its own line, or the Q would be on its own line, and then the next line would start the colon. So that's the big thing. I tend to use spans. Spans are inline, which means don't take up the whole entire line of the web page. Divs are by default block style, which means take the whole web page, but you can override any of these stylings.
So we've got this div. There's a container that's this wide on the page, and the div just tries to be the entire thing, even though the word hello doesn't need all that much space. And the border shows how big it is.
And show the code why it does that?
So I just have a div that has the class show me.
Right there. Yeah.
Then
So the div by default wants to be as wide as it can go. And because everything's in containers in HTML.
Yeah, so everything is inside this div class study, which limits the width already. But then I can change this if I say display none.
Yeah, so even though it's still a div, he's overriding the display.
And it looks strange, so but you can change the behavior of various things like that.
Let's look at the trial types that have already been set that we don't
Yeah.
have to mess around with.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, this is getting kind of advanced, but I think this is useful for when you start messing with stuff. You'll be like, oh, that's how you do that kind of stuff. Or at least it'll be a reference, but that's why I should start Googling about.
But I've been using Collector for a couple years now, and I've very rarely had to mess with anything.
Yeah, that's the thing. Most people don't need to. But I know some people who immediately out of the gate want to do really weird stuff. I'm like, well, you can do it. Like, it's that. So I guess that's part of the ethos of this whole thing is there are no black boxes in Collector. There's nothing proprietary. There's no, like, you get an executable and it just does it. Everything that makes this program run is there. You can look at every line of code. I try probably too hard to make the code super readable and really well commented. So if people ask me for really complex stuff, what I tell them is take a crack at it. Like, the code is there. If I can do it, you can do it. I have no special abilities that you don't have. There's not, like, cordoned off areas of things you can't mess with. You can mess with anything, which means you can break any of it. But that's why you can always download the new version. Like, just if you completely trash the version you downloaded and nothing runs.
Or come to UCLA and Tyson.
Yeah, or come to UCLA, do what everyone else does. Say, Tyson, fix it for me. But I mean, for most people, that's not a viable solution. Okay, so so we're on condition 11, right? We logged in here, condition 11, I believe, a while ago. So same thing, these questions pop up. Yes, pay attention. So if we look at the files, the first thing is the stuff we've already seen, so this is kind of boring, but we say, okay, look at line 2, which is here. These three are going to shuffle because of that shuffle code right there. Banana means these are going to get mixed up, but we're going to get one of them. In this case, we got Funny Bone. But that's a study trial. And what's going to happen after, now we're going to go do post 1, and the trial type we're going to see is a JWL trial type. This is very useful for lots of people who do stuff like we do, which means it looks like this. How likely do you correctly recall this item on a later test? Type your response from 0 to 100. Right now, you can do in a day or two. Tyson's going to give me some code that will restrict them to only type numbers and also to not let them type. But for now, they can type whatever they want. So 23. Should we show the code with how these things work, just so people know? Like.
Let's look at all the trial types.
Okay, and then we'll.
Faces first.
So we submit that value. That was the audio trial type. So that sound was the trial type running.
There's a correlation with you pressing the submit button.
Yeah. Like, so if I refresh it, you'll see it just does it again. So can I turn my volume up? So everyone can hear the amazing magic.
Like turn the page on your Disney.
So actually now we should probably show what that code looks like, because that's a trial type we haven't talked about. So here we say go to line 14, and the trial type is audio. So here's 14. And what it's using is the Q, as that's where the audio file is. So here the Q, I guess I can show you up here in the bar. So the queue is audio/chime.wave. So that is similar to the pictures. It's going to be in the experiment folder. There's a folder called audio, and there's a file here called chime.wave. So literally that's all it's doing. It's saying when you have an audio trial type, look to that row, and whatever the file path is there to the audio file you want to play, follow that, find the file, play the file.
And actually, if you have a row that looks like a file, the program will try and check that that file actually exists. So there used to be issues where a lot of people would try and reference a file and they would
and they
spell
didn't
it
know
wrong or something.
Yeah.
And the program now will check and try and find the file case insensitively if it can't find it.
Yeah, so it'll stop you if you try to use an audio file that doesn't exist. When you log in, it'll say, hey, your 10th row is calling you wants to play an audio file, but that file, we can't find it. So that's a good point to go in there. And usually it's named wrong, or you forgot to copy it into the folder or something.
And I think it's a bit forgiving. Like if you leave off the extension and it can find it, it'll be happy as long as it can do that.
Even if you use the wrong extension, like .mp3,
yeah, I think it can still correct itself.
Yeah.
And the same thing is true for images. So if you link an image, the program will try and check that that image actually exists at login. Just to save you some hassle, you have to go through 60 trials and then realize that your file was misspelled.
And for audio files, generally so once we get into things more complicated like audio, browser compatibility gets a little weird. Generally, the most compatible file type is to use .wave. Almost everything will play .wave. Most things will play .mp3 files, but sometimes they don't. I've had browsers that are even up to date for some reason just not want to play MP3 files.
I think Firefox.
Firefox had weird issues sometimes with MP3s. So if you want the greatest compatibility, just save them as WAV files. They're bigger, but I mean the program pre-caches all these files, so when they log in, it loads a copy of everything beforehand, so it should be pulling from its own cache and not from the server every time it hits it. Tyson's looking at that. It might not be true for audio files, but it will be if it's not.
Yeah, I feel like that's not true of audio files, because I know that we
pre-cache images.
Things. We try and show things, but
Show also checks for audio.
Show now checks for audio.
Yeah.
That's true.
So we should be pre-caching everything before. So if you use a bunch of audio files with the login screen, it'll say please wait while loading the experiment for a while it downloads a copy of every audio file. And then when they hit the page that requires a file, it should just pull it from the browser's cache.
Plus, even if they didn't cache it, it shouldn't take that long to load unless you have an enormous audio file.
Yeah, or terrible internet connection. But you can only control so much. So that's audio.
I have a question about refreshing the page. When you refresh it, does it reload the exact trial or the trial type?
What do you mean?
Like when you hit the refresh button?
Yeah.
So here we only have one trial attached to the audio. But say we have like a list that are randomly selected. So is it going to reload that trial type? Or is it going to reload the exact?
Oh, the exact one. So all the shuffling happens only once. It doesn't get redone on shuffles.
It shuffles at login and then never shuffles again.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can do this forever. I need that sound effect in my life. Like I do a thing and I know. The end of every presentation, your data slide.
Just make that what happens when you click submit on it.
Yeah. People will love that for 10 minutes. Okay, the post trial is no. So what the page will do is it'll try to send and basically realize like, oh, there isn't anyone coming up. Write this data. Go to the next one. The next trial type is copy, which I think we've already seen, so we can gleefully jump through it. So again, Q target, Q type to target. People like to use this as a control for test trials versus study trials. If you want to control that they're both typing something, you have them type cat. Hit submit. Okay, so this is a different one. This is, we need a thing that scrolls to the top of the page again. We'll fix this, Tyson. So for now, that was annoying that it should have scrolled to the top of the page.
I think it tried to autofocus on the button.
Oh, that's probably what happened. We should autofocus the button, but then scroll to the top.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's happening? Sorry, this is behind the scenes. So the stuff that we're talking about is the most complicated part of the experiment, which is, so right now we've been talking about how it's recording times and doing all this stuff. That stuff is all happening in JavaScript, which is the other thing. If you really want to know everything you need to learn, But I would say be less concerned about JavaScript than other stuff. The HTML and the CSS is making new trial types to look the way you want. JavaScript is like, I want things to happen live on the page as I'm there. Like after 2 seconds, I want this word to change to another word, or I want to click this and have it turn a different color. That's all JavaScript stuff. But there's a lot of ways to shortcut JavaScript. You don't really have to know it all that much if you use this library called jQuery, which we'll talk about later. That's the complicated stuff. And most of that stuff is just handled for you. Just automatically you get timing and all that jazz that is annoying to do. So this is the passage trial. You can see we go to item 11, which is this. And the way the passage trial works is we just say send us HTML and we'll display it. So generally you're just making paragraphs. So a starting p tag, a closing p tag. So the two, what are those called? The bar? What is that? What's this triangle thing? I don't know. There's a name for them. Either way, you've got eyes. This is what we're doing here. So we've got opening p tag. The closing is the same thing, except for there's a / in front of the p. That means the end of this paragraph. So this is all the formatting we're giving it. If you look, the passages are actually shuffled among 11, 12. Oh no. Oh, okay, here's the thing. This is super annoying. Excel does this sometimes. It wants to say, oh, I'll show you everything in the box. So you have to tell Excel, don't do that.
Yeah, you can just go to home and there's a rack.
Oh, I should do that. Well, either way, the important part is, okay, we shuffled 11, 12, and 13, and the program said pick whatever ends up in 11, and what ended up in 11 is this description of the amazing TV show, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. If you haven't watched it, you should be watching it. But you can see it's just open a P tag, and then I do this B tag, which just means bold. So that's how you bold things. And then I bold It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. It's a description, closing P tag, opening P tag. And what that translates to with the passage trial type is something that looks like this. So it's nicely formatted for reading at a computer. So It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. This is from the Wikipedia page, just talking about the show. So it has these nice paragraph breaks. It's pretty readable. At the end, we added this end of passage thing. If you don't want it, you can, again, like everything, you have access to all the code. So you can actually go into the code, trial type. If you look at passage.php, there's literally just a h3, end of passage. You can delete that, save the file, and if you refresh it, now that's not there anymore. Put it back. So you can mess with all this stuff, but we had the end of passage because we would have some participants who would get a screen like this and read down to that line and stop reading, like they had never touched a computer before. So we had to tell them, when you get a passage, read down until you see end of passage, because they would stop. Like they were as lazy as humanly possible. That they sat here and said, "I'm done. The screen is ended." Tell some animosity there, some wasted data. So generally, we say go to end of passage. These are all user time, so they have this next or submit button. If it wasn't user time, so if you'd set the timing to be like 5 minutes, or I guess you'd set 300 seconds, right? Then this next button would be gone, and they'd be stuck here for 5 minutes. They couldn't go on. At 5 minutes, it would submit on its own and go to the next page. So this is good if you want to have them studying text passages or reading something. The next trial type we're looking at is study pick. So this is one we use all the time for the interleaving studies. And again, Excel did this annoying thing and said, I can make it bigger for you. Shut up, Excel. Okay, 10. So 10 is right here. 10 is being shuffled among 8, 9, and 10. So we're going to get either the Bob Dylan album cover, I think this is, was that Led Zeppelin, or the MF Doom album cover. Probably I should take those out. There's probably copyright issues, but they're in there for now. So I hit next, and what I see is this. So I see a big picture, and I see a label underneath it, and because it's user timing, there's some button here that says go next. If you want to see what I actually had to give the program, so this is the MF Doom. It's very similar to the audio trial type, so images / the name of the file. If you look in experiment, there's an images folder, and there's the name of the file that we're looking at. So it's literally just point me at the file in the images folder. it makes the assumption that it's looking inside the experiment. So if you don't want it to have it called images, you can make it image 2 and then rename this folder to image 2, and it would all work. Although if I renamed it right now and ran again, it wouldn't work because the program is already shuffled at the beginning, and it has a little pointer in memory saying, go to this thing, go to images / Operation Doomsday. If I change the folder names and change this file, it doesn't matter because the program's still running out of memory, or it's running from its own memory and saying the pointer that we have saved in memory is pointing at a folder called images. So if you want to change the folder name, you'd have to reload from the beginning.
So that's what's been stored in the session?
Yeah, and that's what's in session trials. In that big thing I was showing you earlier, all that stuff is stored at the beginning. When it does its shuffling, and then it stores everything in trials, and the program is literally just going trial 1, do all the stuff we need to do, save the data, go to trial 2, and now do all the stuff we need to do.
What if we change that file in the beginning, in the middle of the experiment?
You could technically rewrite it. So actually, Victor has done this in that he wanted a study that goes to a certain point and then looks back to say, okay, if we got these right, put them in the upcoming stuff, and that would work. So you could say, after trial 10, look back, find all the items we were correct on, now make those trials 11, 12, 13, 14, whatever, and then keep running, and the program would work, and now it would basically be adapting to what you're doing. But by default, it doesn't do that, because if you just rewrite the files, it doesn't look at the basic files you had. It just looks at what's in memory, but if you change what's in memory, it'll work.
Right.
So it's a little bit more work to do that, but if you understand how the structure of trials works, you can do it. You can just say, okay, well, keep track of the ones I'm getting right and put those up next, or keep track of the ones I got wrong and splice in. So basically you just have trials and you say, okay, move all the other things up by 5 positions. Now fill the next 5 positions with these things that I want. So it's a little bit more complex, but it's doable, and Victor has done it himself.
So that would be if you wanted to do learning to criterion.
Yeah, so criterion learning. And so people always want that functionality built in, and I basically tell them it's really hard to build an interface that's like the one we're using now that can do all this stuff, and at some point it does require a little bit of programming, but it really is only a little bit of programming. It's like writing a PHP function that says, if correct, store it here, and then at some point saying, okay, go to the things we've stored and put them as the next things that are happening, and then the program will keep running. So here you can see I pointed at a folder and I give it a label, and what the trial does is it says, show me that image and use this label. What's important on the image is that it actually has this extension. If you don't have the image extension, the program doesn't know to add all the HTML around it that makes it display. So again, I'm going to show you the actual code here. So this is using Firebug just to show you here's what's on the page. Actually, I can do the nicer versions. Inspect. I can point it at something and Firebug will show me. So here's why Firebug is awesome. You can do this. You can click this little button that says inspect, and then I can click on any element of the page and it will show me the code that makes that part of the page run. If I click on the image, it highlights for me here. Here's the stuff that makes the image. So it says an image tag. Can I make this bigger? Oh, there it is. So the way it has to work, let's get a little smaller. I say declare an image tag, and then source equals, and it points it at the correct, it adds the go to the experiment folder, and then take the thing that we wrote, which is images, this stuff. And this happens for you automatically, but the only reason it's happening is because we check if it has a file extension for an image, and if it does, then to add the HTML on for you. So if you don't add a file extension, the program doesn't know that there's supposed to be an image there. It doesn't add the correct little tags for you. So just make sure you have a file extension. If the file extension is wrong, it'll actually work, right, Tyson? The way yours is written, I think.
It might. I have an option that is set to either true or false to allow that. I don't remember what it is currently, but it can find file names with incorrect extensions.
But if it has no extension, it just won't know it's a file, right? It'll just basically not work. What'll happen, it'll show you the text that says / images instead of the big picture. You'll just have some text there, so don't do that. That's bad for you. Test pick. This is super useful again for the interleaving studies we do. So this is, again, we're looking at 10. So which image are we going to see? We looked at 10 for study pick and 10 for test pick.
Operation Doomsday.
Yes, excellent album. So we're going to see the same thing. Oh, wait, I forgot. We had feedback on the study pick. So because we had feedback, it shows us the image again and says the correct answer was whatever the label is for this. Feedback doesn't make as much sense after a study trial, but after the test one, you can imagine if I change that to feedback there, it would make a lot more sense as far as why would this study exist. So that's the feedback trial for, the feedback is set to, if you just write feedback, it knows if there's an image to do it in this format. If there's no image, don't do it in this format. So it kind of figures that out for you. So here's the test pick, which means show me the big image and then give me a box to type what I think the label is. I'm calling the exact same row as before. So what is it? So I'm calling row whatever this ended up being. So Operation Doomsday. So it knows the answer is MF Doom. So if I type MF Doom, then the program is going to score this. It's going to compare what I type here against what the answer is supposed to be, and it'll score it for strict scoring. So if it's perfectly correct, but case insensitive. So if I have all the right characters there, it'll give me a 1 for strict scoring, or a 0 if I get it wrong. So a typo, that's a 0 strict scoring. Where it'll also score it for lenient. So the criteria we set in the settings file is 75%. So if this text matches 75% of what we said the answer is supposed to be, it'll score you a 1. If not, it'll score you a 0. So I could submit this. That'll go. And the next thing we see is another very useful one, which is MC pick. So this is multiple choice with a picture. So this is explicitly created to do the Cornell and Bjork type studies. And here you see the big picture. So again, we're calling the same row. So we're just looking at the Q column has the path to the picture. We wrap all the HTML for you to make the picture show up. And beneath it are all these little buttons that you can choose. So right now they just say cat 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And that is set in the settings file. So we just go back to experiment, settings. So the settings file is mostly where you're going to mess with stuff. And here under, it's line 40 right now, but it just says multiple choice buttons. So these, just whatever names you set here, these are going to be the buttons. So Nike, KP, spelled wrong, doesn't matter. And
I feel left out.
I forgot this Tyson. I was only including women's choices. Wait, I'm on there, damn it. Tyson. Actually, no, it's not going to use these, right? Because it's already done the shuffle. We'll see.
I actually don't know how you set up settings to do it.
Okay, so, well, let's see. This may or may not work, but... No, it's not because it did the shuffle once. Okay, so we'll show you again really quickly. Actually, I can just run the experiment up to this point because it's self-timed. So that's one of those things that if I set, it won't appear until the next setting, which I just found out right now. But okay, so again.
Which is actually different from most of the other settings, which are pulled fresh
Yeah.
on each page.
And the reason it's different is because what we do is we grab all these buttons and we randomly shuffle them. So the order they appear here inside of multiple choice buttons is not the order they'll appear on the screen for the participant, and it's randomly shuffled per participant. So every participant's going to get a different random ordering of buttons. If you actually go into the MC pick trial, there's a setting to turn that off. But as it is, it'll shuffle everything once for the participant, and then every time you call an MC pick trial, it'll show them the same ordering for that participant, but the next participant will get a new random ordering of their buttons that will be consistent throughout the experiment. So we try to find a happy medium between having one set ordering and having it be completely unpredictable, and you have to search for your answer. So you know, if you want to say Mikey, Mikey will be in the same position for you as a participant, but the next participant, it'll be in a different position, but in a consistent position. So let's run through up to that point. So, oh, we get to hear the sound again. Awesome.
So is there a way to set the multiple choice options individually for each trial in this version?
There isn't right now, but it's coming very soon. That we're adding a column or two. We're adding a settings column basically that'll let you do this stuff, but it's not in there right now.
settings are fine.
What about to randomly select choices? So say you have a total of 12 choices, but you only want 4 to show on each trial.
You can actually do that pretty easily.
Yeah.
So actually, so this is a good point where I can say the code is pretty flexible and that you can just copy that thing. So lots of the code looks complicated, but you can. So here's why I do the shuffling. If session MC button is equal to false, so that means the first time you hit this page, if this session variable doesn't exist, it's because we haven't created it yet. So that means the first time you hit the page, MC is equal to multiple choice buttons, which is just pulling directly from settings. So we're just saying, okay, grab these multiple choice buttons and set that to MC. Shuffle MC. Session multiple choice buttons equal to MC. So I basically just grab all the buttons you set over there, shuffle them, and show me those. Or else I show the session, which basically means after it's set once, just keep giving me the same thing every time. So
the other nice thing about these collector sessions is that we can use it to collate a sort of wish list
yes.
as to what we would like Tyson and Mikey to help us put
Or we can use it to give you the tools to fish, and then you can make all the features you want.
No, the way.
So that's the
collector.
That's the push and pull of me and Tyson. Tyson likes to do things for you. I like to teach you how to do them.
But that's one of the strengths of the collector is that the more you use it, the stronger it gets. So like as you make new trial types and new functions, it gets easier and easier to share it with other people. Like the new trial types folder. Now it's really easy to just copy and paste. So someone makes one, and then you want their solution, you just ask for the one file, and you drop it in, and it's good to go.
So let's look at KP's. Actually, this is a good okay. Let's do some intro to programming. So KP wanted to make a new MC pick. So we're gonna copy MC pick because it mostly does what we want. I will just name it MC pick. Come on, mouse cursor. MC pick KP. So this is KP's version of MC pick. She wants to do something different. What's nice.
Famous.
Yes.
Call it that from now on.
From now on, like what's KP? Like, never mind. Don't you worry about it. It's important. Okay, so where is it? So we made it. There it is. So now we're looking at KP's version. So now we don't have to mess with the, if for some reason we completely wrecked this, we haven't ruined our MC pick trial type, we can still go back to that version and be like, okay, I don't know what I broke, but it's broken. Okay, I still have the original. So this is a lot nicer. The old version, you used to have to go in and mess with all the code, and that's ugly. Okay, so here, this was our old solution, so let's try to think of a new solution. So what do you want to do, KP?
I want to, on each trial, show only 4 choices.
Okay.
And those 4 are randomly selected from the 12. Of course, there'll still be 1 target.
Okay.
So why don't we
so
just
the 3
do
distractors are selected randomly from them.
So this is actually pretty easy. Okay, so right now we can follow the beginning part. We can say, okay, if we don't have an MC pick button value set, so if it's false, so that doesn't exist yet, then MC pick is equal to the multiple choice button. So basically grab the buttons, and here we can even shuffle the buttons and say, okay, session MC button is equal to the shuffle thing that we did, right? So now the next thing we can do is say, so if the thing has been set before, how do we make it show only the first 4? So right now what we're doing is saying MC is equal to the buttons that we had picked before, right? So what we can do is change it, and what we want to do is change what MC is. MC is going to be the thing that shows up for the participants. So right now MC is equal to the buttons we had, but we can actually say MC is equal to an array, and position 0 of the array is equal to session. So we actually just copy this whole thing. It's a lot easier. So the array just has position 0, 1, 2, 3, and it goes up. So we're saying, okay, set the first item of this array MC equal to.
Actually, if you're doing a.
I'm going to show them the
array. You don't need the 0 points to this. You just sort of comma separate here.
I'll do it this way because it's so. This is Tyson does shortcuts. I don't like shortcuts. I like to do the verbose way that is the most straightforward. Tyson will take shortcuts because it's faster in typing.
It looks nicer.
I think mine looks nicer, Tyson. Okay, so here's what I'm doing. Fight is on, guys. No, me and Tyson get along. There's so much work. So here's what I'm doing. I'm just saying, okay, position 0 is equal to the first thing in MC buttons. Position 1 is equal to the second thing. but you guys are getting the idea. Oh, the mouse. I forgot about the mouse. 3 is equal to 3. So now what we've done is say, give me 4 buttons, but the problem is right now the 4 buttons are always the same, right? Every time they hit the page, you'll get the 4 buttons.
Pull off the trailing column.
I don't think it doesn't hurt anything, right?
Really?
I don't think it does. I don't think it, because the thing it's after it's empty. This is a side conversation. I think it works. But okay, so right now what we're doing is saying, okay, the buttons we're going to see are always the same. There'll be a random 4 buttons for each participant, right? Because we shuffled which buttons we're pulling, but we're gonna get the same 4 buttons. So all we have to do is say, you can see how we shuffled up here, and we're going to do the same thing. So each time we're going to shuffle the buttons that we have. So we're going to put them in a random ordering, and now we're going to pull the first 4 that show up every time. So now MC Pick KP will give me some 4 buttons. I don't know which 4 of the buttons, but I know it'll be a pool of the buttons. And now you still have the original MC Pick, and now you have an MC Pick that says, show me 4 of the whatever number of items I have. Show me a different 4 every time. So I'm going to get 4 random choices from all the possible choices I had. And it's as simple as that. Like if I run this...
But one of them still has to be the target.
Oh, you have to make it the target?
Well, because
okay, so then...
otherwise, it won't be corrected.
Yeah, that's what I was like. I thought it was a weird option. So what you have to do basically just grab the target and put it in position 0.
Right, okay.
And then add 3 more random ones,
yeah,
and then shuffle them.
Right.
But I mean,
But
like
okay, I get
this,
the idea.
this logic is about as complicated as most of the programming gets. It's a lot of just like, grab this thing, and it's almost always like this, and that it's almost always an array is what stuff is stored in. Almost everything is some array.
But the thing is, this is going to give the exact same choices for each participant.
This will be different for everyone.
No, different per participant, but not per trial.
No, this will do per trial as well.
Oh, really?
Because right now, every time they hit this page, it'll do the check saying, do we have the buttons made? The first time you hit this trial, it will say, no, we don't have buttons. So basically pull in the buttons for me. But every other trial, this session buttons will exist already, and it'll say, okay, it already exists, so shuffle it.
Actually, in that
Now
case,
set the first 4 to be the whatever came out shuffled as the first 4.
in that case, perhaps the
You don't even need a
variable
top.
MC should be outside of the else, since you want to do it also on the first pass. Like, basically, if you haven't created the multiple choice buttons, create the multiple choice buttons, and then either way, pull off 4 of them.
Yeah, so this troubleshooting stuff is stuff you can basically just, when you run it the first time, you're like, there's way more buttons the first time than the second time. Work on the logic. But generally, like, this is the kind of programming you're doing.
Okay.
And almost everything is array-based. Even strings, like if you want the first letter, so right now we have target is equal to something. Target is a string, let's call it, Mikey. I'll do Tyson because he didn't get one last time. So the string target is Tyson. So if I say target and target 0, if I say echo target 0, that will basically give me the first letter of whatever that string is. So lots of people want to do queued recall. Like I want to show the first 2 letters. You say echo target, and you can use this string concatenator, which is a period. So that just means combine these 2 things that I'm giving you. So I say target 0 and target 1. So show the first 2 letters and then show them a bunch of underscores. So that's what they'll see. They'll see that as they'll echo out TY, bunch of underscores. That'll be the thing they see. So if you understand arrays in PHP, you can do almost everything you do, because almost everything we do is in an array somewhere. And then if you decide, like, later you don't like this trial type at all, you just go in the folder and delete that file, and you're good to go again. Are we still talking about trial types? Wow.
Yeah.
We're like 2 hours in, and we've just been like, here's almost one condition. Although we did a lot more programming stuff, which I think is, if you want to make trial types, you kind of have to get into some programming if you want to do it. The test one we've already talked about. We'll skip that. It's not interesting. Oh, so here are the buttons when we changed them last time. Let's see, Courtney. So Mikey, KP, Aaron, Courtney, Veronica's Veer, and Tyson. Okay, this is a test trial again. Q, target. They have to try to guess something here. Or they have to try to get the correct answer. It'll compare against what the answer should be. here's the feedback. Here's what it looks like when you. So I just call feedback, and it knows there's not an image here. So it says the correct answer was this. This is a free recall. So these are weird trials. The item number is 0, which means it doesn't correspond to something in the stimuli file. Instead, free recall is looking at procedure notes. So it'll look to whatever the notes are. So here the notes say, write down everything you can remember that, what does it say, that has happened so far in the experiment. And you get a prompt that looks like this. And participants.
And we need to replace that.
Yeah.
Sort of says text that's going to show up when you put your instructions in there or your free recall prompt.
Change because that's
So
not
does
very-
that mean there's no automatic scoring of free recall if you're not corresponding it to a specific row?
There isn't, but I want to get it from Tyson because Tyson has the code for it. We just have to add in 1 or 2 functions to call. We need to be able to do this basically. Say 2 through 10.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
Excel hates
Excel does
this.
Excel hates this stuff.
And now it won't let you do normal. Like if you try and just put 1 in there, it'll try and put.
No, I can do undo.
So you have to do 2, 3 to 10.
Yep, that's my solution.
Yeah. Or let's see what else we
Or
do.
you can go to home and
2
format it as text.
pipe 10. Our pipes are 2 for no.
No.
We have to. So this is what we have to figure out: is like how can we make this easy to enter, but Excel will not screw with us because Excel does like to do that, and it's really hard to tell Excel to stop doing it.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just open them up in a regular text editor and change the values because Excel is dumb. But right now it's just called on 0, which means there isn't a row in the stimuli file.
I still kind of
Look
like
here.
just getting used to doing like 2, 3, -10 because the range notation.
2,
People are-
3, -10.
Yeah.
People are just really used to the, like they know what that means. You know?
Yeah.
That's how you would tell the printer to print out specific
Yeah,
pages.
right. That's,
Yeah.
that's what I was basing it off of was printer.
So yeah, so we could we'll try to put that in there, but that'll be there soon. And then the other one is in the struct trial. This one is one that everyone uses because they didn't want to have to do the programming on instruct.php. So instead, they just have a row called instruct, and in the procedure notes, you just write HTML. So you just give it, here's a heading, and then here's a paragraph. So this say, get ready, continue. In this next section, you'll be doing a variety of tasks. It will be confusing, but please stick with them. There will be a payoff in the end. That's a lie because the study's over after that trial.
But
But-
yeah, that's also helpful for if you want to display in smaller chunks or if you want to display the study instructions and then at the end of the study phase do the test instructions.
Yeah, the instruct trials are very good for in between phases of the experiment to say, okay, you're going to take a 5-minute break, or go, if you're doing stuff in the lab, you say, go and get the experimenter and tell them you need X or Y or Z if you want a paper distractor or some sort of survey. Soon the survey can be done on the internet. Tyson has code for us.
So the instruct trial really just says, look at what's in that text or procedure notes column and just run whatever HTML is in there.
Yeah.
Just put that on the
Yeah.
screen. That's all it
So
You could literally write code in there. You write JavaScript in there and have it do a bunch of stuff. It would be a way overloading of the instruct. I mean, you'd be better off just writing a trial called JS, but essentially that's all it's doing. It's saying, grab the contents of this cell and then send them to the web page.
So in classes where I've had undergraduates who want to do their own project, undergraduate lab classes, I've used the instruct trial to embed a video.
Yeah.
So if you get an embed URL, like source code from YouTube or whatever, you can actually embed a video, and you just use instruct to present the video.
Yeah. Although semantically now it's easy enough to just copy instruct and call one video, and
Yeah.
before it just used to be a real pain to add trial types, so people would use instruct for lots of stuff because they're like, I don't know how to add one, but I can copy all of the text of a study trial into this thing. Because you could do this. You could say PHP, and then you could start writing PHP code in here because it's just gonna. Wait, no,
No,
it wouldn't.
couldn't
That
do
wouldn't
that.
run. Yeah.
But
That's
you
one
can
thing you
do
could do.
anything up to HTML, CSS, and JavaScript.
Yeah, you can do style and start doing stuff here. Essentially, this is
And then
just
you
saying, here's some
probably should do your own
HTML.
trial type.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's pretty lazy. But you could really
And it's
also,
hard to edit.
Yeah,
You realize you want something to change.
because then your text editor is this Excel box. You're much better off just having a window that looks like this for highlight the text coloring stuff for you. But technically, all this is saying is, grab this HTML, show me it. Even if you didn't do HTML and you just said hi, it would just send that. HTML, if you just send it text, will display the text. It just won't have any formatting. It'll just look weird. But you could do that.
There is some default instruct rapid and instructive, which makes it a little bit bigger and centers it on the screen.
Okay, so it won't be as bad, but generally, if you want to have like paragraphs or something, you'd have stuff. But you could just type text in there and it would work. Like that's what the free recall is doing. This basically has some inherited styling, but you could change it to whatever you want. So that's why you just have to type stuff in, and it'll kind of look okay. But if you wanted to bold the word, so like you really want them to write down everything, you say B. So write down everything, and then that would show up bolded on the free recall. So those are all trial types. Should we stop here? I don't know. There's a lot of stuff.
Oh, Sharon said that if you want to get around that date thing being annoying, you can type apostrophe 2 through 10.
Yeah. It turns into text.
Would that save as apostrophe to Nintendo? Because I'm thinking what the program is looking at.
I think Excel knows to save it.
Let's see. Let's save this file. Okay. So we're saving all trials.txt, and we're opening it in a text editor. Collector experiment.
But then I think
procedure.
the problem is that.
No, it worked.
Right, but then there might be some other issue. I don't remember.
Let's see here. Let me show the paragraph. Yeah, it doesn't save that apostrophe. The apostrophe doesn't show up in the final file.
Try closing Excel and opening it again, because it also matters that these are.
They open up again.
they're not Excel files. They're not proper Excel files with all the encoding wrapped around it. They're just sometimes So when you reopen the file, then it.
Oh, Excel, you're so funny.
It has to do with the fact that these are TXT files or CSV files that.
I try to put the apostrophe back. Oh, it doesn't restore it formatting either.
No. So yeah, just get used to the 2, 3 through 10 notation.
Yeah. But that doesn't work right now. That 2, thing does not. Like if you do that now, the program will just say, "Oh, I don't like it."
Yeah, because if it gets a date, it won't know what that means. It'll like you want item 4,400.
Yeah. But I guess we're gonna call it. I don't know. We talked a lot about random stuff, which I figured was gonna happen because there was no plan.
And maybe next week we'll do some more complicated trial types, but I'll have demos prepared.
But this gives me a lot of ideas for requests to make.
Don't request, KP. Learn to
Or
fish.
questions to
standard
ask.
Questions.
multiple choice. Read a passage, and then you just ask them like multiple choice questions. Is there an easy way to do that with what you guys have, or would that require?
No, but next week there might be. I think
Okay.
it wouldn't be hard to add that
What was the
text.
question?
Like-
So like most of my experience right now have people like read a passage and then they just answer like a bunch of multiple choice questions about the passage, like testing effect type stuff.
That
so it
wouldn't
wasn't like
be.
something specifically like that in Collector.
Oh,
There isn't, but you could. That'd be easy enough to make like a thing that's like take this input and then like I was telling KP because the input doesn't have to be Q target stuff. Like you can make it a much more like meaningful input, like especially for that type of setup. So experiment. Where is it?
So you can make the Q like a question, like what is it?
Oh, you don't even have to use Q target. You can do this, and you can just say, "Oh, there it is."
I mean, it's good to keep things in sort of a standardized format. Actually, so I have template, which is sort of based on Collector, and I have something that's like a multiple choice trial type, which lets you do stuff like that. And I think Mikey and I are going to try and make it so that our 2 versions, more closely correlated, so that we can share files easier. But
So you could just go to your stimuli and add a column called question, then op1, op2,
Okay.
op3, and then you could just make a trial type that says, okay, echo question here, echo option 1 here, echo option 2 here, and you can have it do that.
Okay.
Yeah, so what's really nice about the procedure and stimuli files is that you can just add as many columns as you need. So instead of trying to, when I didn't have this, I would try to shoehorn a bunch of stuff into one column. So like Q would have a bunch of pipes separating values that I was having the program explode apart, and I realized like that was a dumb solution. So I just had it that if I just add extra columns, then I'm able to access them the same way. So
that was my solution. Wow.
yeah, it's super annoying, right? Like after a while, you're like,
It's
this
dense.
is absurd to edit. So like stuff like now you like current trial, stimuli, op1. So that would give you the value for on the trial I'm on, look at the stimuli and look for what's in the column op1.
Okay.
And then you would just write a trial type that does this. And current trial is actually, we should show people how we do that. Current trial is just literally there to make your life a little easier, but it's pretty much directly accessing stuff. It's doing this. So at the top of trial, we say current position is equal to session position. So this is a variable we store. current trials equal a session trial number or current position. So we say current trial is basically a shortcut to get to session, trial, whatever number we're on. But technically you could write session, trial, current position, stimuli, or whatever you need to get to. So current trial is just a shortcut. It makes it easier. Which is why Q is actually just a shortcut of saying go to current trial, stimuli Q.
Okay.
And then there's also that variable current procedure. That will pull out just the columns from the order file that you are currently using. So like if you've got trial type is free recall, and then post-trial is be the relevant ones. Like on the first one, it will just contain the timing and the trial type of the free recall one, and the second one will only contain the columns that are the trial type.
So here you can see I'm setting basically the things like we made those extra columns,
Mm-hmm.
and I can just say, okay, so just call this, oops, $. I guess I'm crazy about lining things up, so QU, so I go, okay, make that line up equals current. Oh man, I'm learning the spelling today. So basically you just set these beforehand, and every trial type it'll have them available, and then you can just say echo QU, echo op1, and it'll work. So it's relatively easy to do most of the things to make new trial types. It's just lots of people I think are afraid, especially the code used to look a lot scarier before because everything was on one page. So this file right now is 200 lines. It used to be something like
1,000.
Like 1,000 lines long, and you had to go inside of ifs and loops and change things. But now it's a lot easier to just go to the top and be like, okay, I see where they're setting up what Q is. I want to set up what this other thing is. And now in my trial type, I just access that little pointer I set up beforehand. I guess that's the day. I don't know. It's not really a plan here. We'll keep rambling on next week. Go team. Tyson will have demos. What are we going to talk about? What do we want to talk about?
What are you demoing?
Complicated trial types and custom score.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because right now everything uses the default scoring scheme, but there's a way to say,
I mean,
on these
also-
trial types, I want it to be scored this way.
So just one thing we haven't quite seen yet is just what the raw output looks like.
Oh yeah, we should cover.
Data.
So
Yeah.
after we
Yeah.
type get data, then we'll show people
Yeah.
get data. Because there's a nice interface that we have that Tyson wrote for pulling out data, which I resisted very heavily, but I've grown to love it. So Tyson, sometimes I agree with him.
Yeah.
Is there anything else?
Sometimes.
So
I mean, I like that stuff Tyson does. I just think we have different philosophies on how to coach. How forgiving the coach should be, mostly. But yeah, so we'll show you a bunch of stuff next week. You'll look at what the actual output is. We've been showing you how to run experiments without how to look at any data. So next week is data. Does anyone have cool? Should we talk about like good practices for like making your data easy to use and how to do pivot tables? Like that's pretty useful stuff that
Yeah.
I think most people don't use, but it's really
yeah.
nice. Do you have any like output that we can fly through?
Probably. We have
Alright.
a million painting studies we could fly through and look at different ways. So, how I've done the confusion matrices tables that could be useful, like as another way of showing how to play around with the tables. Exclusion criteria. Oh,
Do you have any on Mikey's selector?
good question. I've been using mostly template
Yeah.
lately.
That's why, and the output even for the stuff I was doing is gonna look different since we have get data.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll figure it out. We can generate fake output. I mean, I can just run it 10 times and click randomly and be like, look how terribly I did. All right, go team. Wait, so what's the plan next week? Data stuff.
Tyson stuff, data stuff.
So I'll get data and complicated trial demos.
Yeah.
some
And
scoring.
then maybe we can start talking about which stuff that we would like. Which
Okay.
wish list stuff.
Feel free to email those to me ahead of time. I can just
I
make
already
sure that I
sent an email
understand
out.
questions. And
You started the chain?
Already started a wish list chain. Did you see that email?
I have to pull it up. I don't remember seeing it.
Although I
Sent
think
that
we
out,
should.
like, last Monday.
So again, this is gonna differ between me and Tyson. I think we should look at that wish list and plot things like stuff like KP wanted
Like,
today.
show us how to do it.
Yeah.
There you go.
Because Tyson will
Or
just
if there's
come back with
things
a solution for you,
Well,
and I'll come back with a learn PHP.
But if it's going to be a thing that's going to be very useful for a lot of
Yeah.
researchers, it might as well be part of the
Like the free
China
recall thing,
collector.
that Tyson has a free recall scoring method that you can give it a range of, look at all these columns, and now have them do a free recall and then give me a score on what they did.
Hey, am I on your email? I don't.
And that's too complicated to explain how it works because I don't know how he does it.
But for instance, I think some of the things on my wish list, like conditional trials, or for example, Victor's learning to criterion might be some standard things.
Although,
Right, yeah, because criterion I think is complicated enough
that you should program it. That's what I was saying earlier.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the programming, I think if we show you the basics of, like, if you understand, like, that it's all just running out of a big array, it's really not hard to do the criterion stuff. But it's really complicated to have an interface that you need a way to tell it, okay, these are the items that I want to be checking against. This is the specific check I want to do. This is my criteria. Like, that kind of stuff is more easily accomplished instead of in like a Excel interface. You just write a script that does this stuff for you. But I think if you understand kind of the backbone of what the program's running off of, it's pretty easy to code something like that. Yeah, the conditional stuff gets really hard to do if you.
Is it under collector tutorials? Is that your subject name? Because I see some things here like
we're all looking at
customizing
Tyson's
formats,
inbox.
displaying answers.
Yes, that's my wish list. So the
Multi-session,
conditional trials, just
right,
because
we should fix multi-session.
Oh yeah, multi-session is weird. We should talk about that at some point. That there's more than one session. It's possible to do multiple session experiments. That they come back and
It's
log
not
in.
currently
Like a
broken.
delay test
Yeah.
or like a
Yeah,
something
like
else.
come back in a week and log in again, and you get the second part of the thing.
Yeah.
Like
definitely.
that's
one.
that is a feature that is currently, I think, broken. Right? Someone told me Toshi said it was broken, but it can be probably pretty easily fixed and I think improved. But we'll talk about it when it's there.
And conditional trials are used for people who want to do like recognition and then old, new, and then remember no judgments.
So what
Like
do you mean?
if you responded old, then ask this participant if they remember that or they
Mhm.
only know it. Versus if they say it was new, you just skip on to the next trial.
What you can use is post trials and have a post trial to just like check their response. Like do like an MC pick and say, okay, old, new, or remember. They click it and then it goes to a post trial that's like conditional thing, and it says, oh, if the
Trial type
last
is for recognition and if response.
yeah.
But also make a
equals
demo
yes.
that does something similar to that, where it's just like if they click a button, show this, otherwise show this.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if current trial response old new is equal to remember, do this. If it's equal to this, do this other thing. So it's easy enough. Like you can kind of use the post trial structure to do this sort of branching. But the really big like criterion learning stuff, you kind of have to do a little reprogramming. But the programming isn't that hard. I wonder if we can have Victor show us what he's done. Although it's on pretty old versions, I think.
Yeah.
But he was able to do it for, I think him and Mary Pick were doing it.
And
And
then
she got it running.
other things on my wish list are eligibility checks. So if I want to make sure they are, like, I only want to do women, or I only want to do people of a certain age or above, or a certain age or below, I want to make sure, or if I want to be able to throw in a list of names that I want to exclude, because maybe these are all MTurk workers who have worked on very similar studies, so I can throw a file in, and if they enter in that worker ID, the
So that
study
worker
just
ID
kicks
thing
in right
already
off.
is in there.
And Mikey and I have actually discussed an idea to switch demographics to an Excel file rather than you have to like edit the HTML.
Yeah.
And then within that, it'd be cool to get a column that's like, exclusion rules, and it's like female but excluded, so that you're only having males or something. But that's not in yet, so.
And that's
Would
a
I be able to
bigger-
handle, like age ranges, like if less than.
Yeah, you should
60.
be able to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's kind of stuff that Tyson can do very well. And like,
I do
give
have
a weird
function-
amorphous input, and I'll figure it out. What I like to do, give me the right input, and we'll run.
Yeah, I do have a function called like evaluate string, and it'll like break apart by equal signs and less than. They're like, oh no, it's false. They were trying to say something that evaluates to false.
Yeah. So,
I'll
but that's a little bit more programmy. I think that'll take a little longer as far as on the wish list stuff. Like some of the other ones are pretty easy to show
it's
you.
easier to hard code these things in, and I can show you how to do that. The simple like non-programming approach probably won't be in there for a while. But
Yeah, because the hard coding is really easy. You just like you submit some values and they say, okay, if this value is greater than this and less than this.
we can actually do that right now.
Yeah.
It's like 2 minutes. So it's
Okay,
just
so I'll look at Tyson's screen so he can show everybody. Make it bigger, Tyson. Go get it. There we go.
So we really simplified how data is recorded. It used to be that we'd sort of list out everything, but now basically we just say that data is an array of their username and their session ID. Session ID is just a random string that's assigned every time someone logs in. And everything that was posted to it, we just add that and then we write that. So it's way shorter and it sort of hides how much we've got. But for example, if you know that you asked the question age on the previous one,
So show them how you can line up the thing you asked with the grabbing the value at the next page, basically by the name of the input. Like here, actually, I can just show this. So what does it do? What are we calling demographics now?
so basic info.
Basic info.
Right.
I forgot why I didn't want to call it demographics.
Right. So like there's questions here where the response name is gonna later it's gonna become as post name. So here there's a question called gender right there. And if we wanted to see
And the
whether or not it's
value, yeah.
male or female, we can do something like this. So S, it happens to be that we post almost everything in our in the collector. There's one page that uses a get, but to access those variables, you do like S post gender, and so that is
We'll
the
give you-
response received.
Yeah, so they, on this input here where you say, what is your gender? The reason we can pull it up on the next page is that we give it a name, gender, which is sort of the label of whatever this input they give us. So on the page that Tyson's looking at, or the code he's writing, it's saying, if the posted value for gender is equal to male, then do this. You press exit. So exit means stop the code, like stop running everything, but he's going to send a message when he exits. I'm sorry, what it says, but girls rule, boys rule. Very nice, Tyson. So this is how you hard code in like these checks. It's actually not that hard.
Yeah.
But like for Tyson's interface of doing it on Excel, that would be a lot of work.
Yeah.
But if you want to just directly go in there, you can just do this
For
and say
an
like
age range.
if post.
Let's do an age range.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So we just do
That's like if it's exactly equal to.
Yeah.
that
So we ask them their
response.
age and we give it the name of age. So if he wants to access it on the next page, he says $_post. Age is the position in the array.
And just to really quickly go over variables in PHP. So everything that's posted gets sent as a string, and technically something like this is not exactly equal to that. So one is an integer and one's a string that holds it. If you use that means sort of loosely compare them so that one is equal to one here. This one means also check the type, and that one
Make it slightly bigger.
So 3 equal signs means it has to be exact, including it has to be
Including
one has
type.
to look at
Uh-huh.
like what they must both be numbers or they must both be strings.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Just 2
And
equals.
everything from post will always be a string. Versus with these type of comparisons, that's always the loose type, so that's why we can just use the number 60 here, because if they say that their age is, like if they just type 32, it'll know to compare that numerically.
So the reason programmers don't like PHP for the reason that Tyson I think like it, and that this loose typing is what makes it really flexible. That you can just say, if the string we got is equal to 50, even if though you can't compare a string to a number, but PHP will try to say, well, the string we got could be evaluated as a number. So if you use the string 50 is double equal to the number 50, it'll say, well, yeah, it's a string 50, but it's also could be the number 50, so we'll do the comparison. But if you say if the string 50 is triple equal to the number, it'll say make sure they're the same type as well. Make sure we got a number and we're comparing it to a number, or else it'll fail. So if you do string 50 triple equal to number 50, it'll always say that's not true. They're not the same thing.
So if you only wanted people who were, say, 45 years old, you would do 2 equal signs 45 here.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you did 3 equal signs, you'd have to put in those quotation
Yeah.
marks.
And so if you want to do a range, like you want it to be between 60 and 70, you can just do it. And then you should also be careful when you're doing these things that the input will not always be exactly clean. Like sometimes people will they'll see a little input box and they'll spell out 30. Like rather than doing 30, they'll spell out the word, or
Could force numerics in.
yeah. So yeah, there will be solutions that help with that, but then also they technically can leave some things blank. So sometimes if you do that in this situation, you'll get like an error message that says, "Oh, I'm looking for a variable that doesn't exist."
Would you have to trim string to lower age? Oh, not string to. Would you have to trim it? Like, would 60
no.
space evaluate as the number 60 still?
I'm pretty sure that
So there's a
in
function
this
you see.
particular case that they don't need to trim it.
There's a function you'll see that Tyson and I use all the time called trim. That just means remove any leading or trailing white space from a value. So what we didn't want is say you type in the column trial type and you put a space after it. We don't want to fail to find trial types because there's a space. So we always say trim out white space at the beginning and end, and then do the comparison so that way it doesn't break if you accidentally put a space at the beginning or the end. So when you see us use trim, or usually we use trim string to lower, which means take out the beginning and ending white space and also make everything lowercase because we don't want it to break if you wrote TR capital IAL type. That would break unless we just say string to lower and then compare it to a lowercase version of trial type.
And yeah, unfortunately, for file names, image names, and stuff, it doesn't matter casing, because the program can check casing sensitivity.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. Another difference is I prefer string to lower trim to trim string to lower.
I know. I think I changed some of yours.
Really?
I think so. I tried not to, but yeah.
The idea was like, well, like you don't want a string to lower the white space. That's a wasted processing. So let's just put the order.
I figured that's why you did it. Okay, I think we're done.
I think so.
All right. See you next week, people. We will talk about program stuff and data. Data is good, right? We're doing all this because we want data. So next week we get data, and we hope it's good.
So yeah, email me questions, or I can like